let's talk about dual and multiple objectives, first of all. So the simplistic way, of course, is to work with one objective. All right, a lot of practitioners use that. It works very well. Having one objective and going for it really vehemently gives us drive. And a lot of practitioners work with obstacles as well, so which of course gives us drama, because if a character can easily get the objective, then there's no drama, so there's an obstacle. With dual objective work, multiple objective work, it's a different ballgame, where instead of having one objective, you have more than one, or sometimes several. And that tears the character in various different directions, and we can feel that as actors. We can feel that we're being pulled in two different directions, which creates an internal contradiction, an internal struggle for the character, which is very lifelike, of course. But more than lifelike, it's organic, because it's how we are in life. We always want more than one thing. You know, we very rarely want one thing only. And those objectives, they fight against each other, and we're conflicted. Yeah, which of course leads us to a character that is much more complex, much more sophisticated, much more of a mess, much more of a real mess of a human being, the way that most of us are in life. Mm-hmm. And then the character has that substance of being equally as messed up. So now you talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting in the rehearsal process to hit upon these and kind of enter with one objective and just see where the scene takes you, but to then, as you play that out, to realise you hit upon, you sense out other objectives and other desires. And I think in the course the guidance was to run with those a little bit, and just in rehearsals to keep playing with them, to let them hit you and see where they take you, and to come back and have a chat about it with your scene partner and kind of explore those a little bit more. And I found that really good to develop them, and to then take it back and realise that you can have the 3 or 4 objectives playing right throughout the entire scene, but they're just at the different levels, and they're simmering and bubbling at different levels when you hit on different points, but they're always present. So like in Running Through West as Austin with Lee, there's so much going on there, and it kind of opens that, you know, he just wants to get rid of Lee, he just wants him out of the house. But then you have, as the scene plays out, you have a lot more dynamics going on. He wants to know what his brother's been up to. He wants his brother to tell him what he's been up to. He wants his brother to feel guilty about taking advantage of his mother. He wants his brother to feel that he's loved, and he wants his brother to let him take care of him. But all that is going on at once, and it does open where, you know, there's a dominant objective and a dominant sense of what he wants, but all the rest are still present. They're still simmering along. I think through rehearsal it was great to stumble upon those and realise that they do work and that they do carry right throughout the entire scene, but just at that working the levels right and know where you sit with them.
Mm-hmm. I probably think the most I'd say amazing use of this tool of multiple objectives is the actual sensations that they create. I think that's the most powerful effect that they have, because in Bloody Poetry, the scene I was doing, playing Harriet, I started as an actor and with the character, and I said, this woman wants to shame her former spouse or her current spouse. And but in terms of going through the rehearsal, you couldn't help. It was a discovery of various other things that were being evoked in going through the scene. I mean, that would surprise you almost. So in rehearsing it a few times, you come up and you realise that, oh, she does want to shame him, but she also loves him. She wants to be loved, but she wants to end her life. She wants maybe at some points to be stopped. She wants, you know, I think it's the idea to open up your mind that there is this tear happens to real people, and not to just use one objective because you're cancelling out or you're not even allowing yourself to have these amazing sensations and conflicts within yourself. So particularly with that scene, going through it and rehearsing it, it was just so surprising. And again, as Eoin's saying, it's that these objectives are happening throughout the scene, but some at different points will be the most prominent, and then that one will die down, another thought will come up and another one. But it is definitely the amount of sensations that are created from the idea of multiple objectives is just amazing to feel, and it is completely real. And I
think it does. It brings a lot of depth to the character, and to actually to be in a position where you can be comfortable with that mesh and mess of objectives that's going on, to be really okay with it, and to let it generate all those sensations, and as you rehearse to find that some of them are pulling at different times that you didn't expect, and to be free to let that happen and see where it takes you, and then carry it into a point where you can actually be comfortable with running that right through the scene as well, and letting them all bubble and simmer like that. And it's freeing as well to let that happen, and to kind of realize that you don't have to follow this one path and this one objective. Obviously, there's a lot going on where, you know, complex creatures and the character is, and we're creatures of desire. So there's always lots going on. So why not carry that as well, and feel strong enough to be able to carry that yourself as an actor to kind of go, yeah, I can actually, you know, I don't need simplicity in this. I need complexity, and I'm, as an actor, I can carry this and I can deliver this because this is who the human being is that I'm portraying and carrying their characters.
I find as well, though, I think you don't do the character justice in saying they want one thing. And it is the head of the actor will intrude, or I found was that if I was using one objective at some point in the scene, I would feel something else and go, no, I'm supposed to be doing this one thing here. So it intrudes completely on being the character in that space of time.
And I think that opens up the possibility as well then of the piece of work creating itself, because you allow those that contradiction to take place. You allow those sensations that are so complex that you can't really describe them because they're never singular emotions anymore. They become much more complex than singular emotions. They're sensations that you could write an essay on them, you know, if you wanted to. But they're pulling in various different directions. And then when you're playing the scene, I think we can allow then those things to be the drivers of the scene, rather than us as actors consciously trying to dictate the scene, kind of control the scene as it goes along, manipulate the scene as it goes along. We can allow those struggles and those tears, those contradictions within the character to let the work go. And we can just sit the lines up on top of that ocean of sensations, that ocean of that turmoil, that tumult that the character's in, and let that be what it is. And that's a very liberating experience, you know, to allow yourself to be free to do that. And then of course we're getting closer to the idea then of third place theory, you know, where we read the script and we sympathize with this person, but we know that's not good enough, you know, as actors. We empathize with them, you know, so it's automatically, as we do in life, we click into something that's happened to us that's similar, in order to, you know, to understand or to get closer to the way the character's thinking or feeling. But of course that's not good enough either, right? Because then once we've run through those two spaces, we end up in another place, which we call third place, which doesn't have a word in the English language. But of course many actors report it to be true, and it is true. You get there by logical processes. But it's a place where you're actually experiencing that world through the eyes of the character. And that's a very immersive feeling. Yeah. So talk about that a little bit if you like.
Yeah, I think the homework is a key part of that again, and it was understanding that place. It was about understanding that, you know, this is their life, and you have to plug in the essence of them. You have to really feel that you're living their life and you know, their moments, and the sympathy which you hit first as you kind of get a sense of who they are when you're reading the script first. You kind of take it in, who this person is, and then you might plug in your own. You have a sense of the empathy, your own life, where you might have, I've loved, or I've lost, or I've experienced loneliness. I know this. But you need to realize that your love is never their love. Your loneliness is never their loneliness. You know, anything what they're experiencing now couldn't possibly what you've ever experienced yourself, because they have such a different essence to them, and you really need to leave all your judgments of them behind and try and realize who they are, and go through that psychological work, and that background work is just so important to actually get you to that point where when you do begin that scene, you're actually dropping yourself into their life. And I think on the course we said it's like your time clock on this planet stops and theirs starts for that moment in time, and you're just letting them exist in this universe in that moment, and then yours ticks again once it's over, which is, you know, it's an amazing thing to go through that, but you really have to have so much depth and knowledge of their work, of their life, in you. So the psychological work we did in terms of knowing their attitudes and their appetites and their life, their childhood, all the memories, the background, the imagery, to really put so much weight and depth into that, or for me anyway, as an actor, definitely even as an artist, it was a key part of it, that imagery, and getting that so vivid, and their childhood, their life, their parents, all of that. Getting that right allowed me to go to that place and really bring their essence to life in that moment, and not my own, and drop all my judgments and drop my experience and my empathy, and really try and understand where they're coming from. And it's a fascinating area. I love that side of it, the psychological side of it. And in the course we probably analysed in depth, in the room among us, 70 different characters, you know, seven slices of humanity. And we looked at them all in such depth and realised the complexity of everyone, that you realise you really do have to do that work to get to that point. You have to understand how complex this individual is, and take it away from your own life, you know, and try and understand and bring them to life yourself. And that was where the power in that, and that was the gateway into immersion and abandon, was that homework again, that psychological effort. And that's what I love, that element of it.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of going from sympathy, empathy to third place, again, what I want to say is it's a good starting point to go. Well, you do naturally go, you read a script and go, sympathy, you know, and then you go, yeah, it's happened to me, and then off you, again, it is in doing all that homework that you arrive at this third place, and that you're seeing the situation through the eyes of the character and not your own. And in doing all that homework, and you need to do, for me anyway, it was so important to have the psychology, the physicality, the essence of that character solved before you could ever touch or go near immersion. Because if one thing is not right in the midst of a scene, the actor comes in and goes, your physicality is not right there, and it totally intrudes on the actual character itself. So it was in solving all and doing all that homework allowed you to go into these places of immersion, and where nothing around you, nothing intrudes essentially on the scene or the piece that you're doing. And when, again, as you say, when we finished the scenes, we felt, well, I certainly felt like as if I'd blanked out for the 5 minutes or whatever scene we were doing. And it's this amazing feeling of just being 100% the character and nobody else for that 2 minute, 10 sec, whatever section, whatever piece you're doing. But yeah, it's in doing all that homework that it allows you to reach this place, and then
having the trust that at the point now you are, you know, you're skilled and you're highly trained, you have a technique, and if you followed it and you've done the homework, then you know you're doing it right, even though you can't remember what you've just, that moment in time. And even better if you can't remember it, because you can have such faith in your own work and the technique that you know it's good work, and you can just go, that was, I did that character's life justice in that moment, you know, and I can't tell you exactly what happened through it, I can't tell you how, you know, how it looked to the outside world, but I know I lived them, and I lived them truthfully, and, you know, I've done great work in this moment, you know, and to reach that point where you have trust in yourself and trust in the technique is really empowering. It's real. It just allows you to take anything on. Then you can really go, yes, you know, I can do this story and this person justice, and it's a wonderful feeling. You don't dwell on it. You don't worry about it. You just go, that was a moment in time, and I know I told their story right.
That you're talking about is the point where the work seems to start to create itself again. You don't need to control it. It starts to flow organically in the middle of the scene. And I think as actors, you know, that's hard at first, you know, because, you know, you guys come to the course and there's 16 actors in crisis in front of me with all of their self-consciousness and their self-doubts and everything else, which is totally understandable. But then to allow yourself to get to that place, to sort of solve in yourself that I'm an artist now rather than an actor in crisis, and to feel the difference between those two things as a true feeling, as a true organic feeling. And then to be able to say to yourself, well, I can leave my homework at home. I can just get up now and do this because I have complete faith in the technique. I have complete faith in myself. You don't even ask these questions anymore, you know. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, in particular, the first time that I'd experienced abandon within the course was with the scene Our Few and Evil Days by Mark O'Rourke, and it was, you'd introduced the concept, and I got up to do the piece, and it was my first experience with abandon, and it's something that I'll definitely be aiming for. It is just such a liberating feeling. But I came down from that scene and I sat down, and I think we started to discuss what had happened in the scene, but it was something about I had sat down and it didn't matter what anybody had said in the room at all, because to me I knew that I'd 100% been that character, told that story, nothing had intruded, and yeah, it was something of just having confidence in myself, going, yeah, I knew I've done what I needed to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's just such a good feeling to, I mean, and that's how it should. There should be no, like, there was no voice in my head going, you should do X, Y, Z. It was all the artist. It was I was immersed. I was acting with abandon and doing things that I'd never done before. And again, I sat down, and it was just, I knew that was right, and it didn't matter what you said or anyone else in the class said. You didn't even have to say anything. I knew I'd done it.
Which is the great paradox,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Because we do all this work,
Exactly.
and then we leave it.
Mm.
And so we have this thing that looks like no one ever did any work,
Mhm.
because it looks so natural
Yeah.
and organic and free and physically full and vocally right and whatever else.
Mhm.
And an enormous amount of work has been done to get there,
Mm.
and yet now it looks like no one ever did anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an awful feeling, isn't it, when you're acting and then there's this little voice knocking on the door
Mm.
just going, no, this isn't right.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't done enough work,
Mm.
or you don't know that speech on page 3, or
Mm.
whatever it is, you know. Or you just haven't solved something about the character's life. So something that you just don't understand about
Mm.
them, that you just haven't traversed a certain bit of territory,
Yeah.
you know. But to know that you have traversed all the territory that you need to traverse,
Mm.
and then say to yourself, well, look at all this wonderful homework I've done, and then be egoless enough
Mhm.
to just say, well, okay, I've done all this wonderful homework, but I'm not going to demonstrate that to my audience.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave that.
Mm.
And if it looks completely organic and it looks like I haven't done any homework, then then so be it. And you guys as well, you know that feeling of being up on stage or in front of the camera and having that 3 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 minute segment of performance where, you know, you come down afterwards and I say to you, well, okay, how did that go? And you just look at me with this completely blank face because you don't know.
Mm.
You weren't there. You were in, you know, it was the character, and that was it. And that was this incredible moment of heightened art that you didn't manipulate at all, and so you can't possibly judge it at the end. You just
Yeah.
do it.
Towards the end of the course, and you know, when it was all coming together and getting there, it was realising that, again, the trust you have in yourself as an artist then, so even putting the actor aside and letting yourself run the scene, but as an artist, that you know you're going to tell the story correctly, you know you're going to do justice to the text, you're not going to veer off somewhere that it doesn't belong, because the artist will, if they need to, will pull you in a slightly different direction, going, well, you're pushing that sensation a bit too far, you're going to lose the storyline here.
Yeah.
But by the time you have the homework done, it's very rare that even needs to happen because you're guiding through the scene. So it just makes sense. It's just organic as the dialogue. It just comes and it just flows out of you.
Yeah.
But the artist is always there to just adjust you slightly if you need it. But to have that confidence that I know how to tell the story right, but also to be free within the dialogue I have in front of me. You know,
Yeah.
to deliver each of it, but to know that as I flow through it could take me slightly different ways, and I don't mind that. You know?
If you look at an actor acting and you can see that they're in crisis,
Yeah.
you know, you can see that they're not sure,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes it's a subtle difference, but it's the actor who has that absolute confidence in themselves that has let that actor in crisis go away, and what's taken over, of course, is an artist, you know, and that's that sense that I'm looking for all you guys, that you are an artist and you don't have to worry about that, and you don't, it's not a, you know, it's not an arrogance to say you're an artist, it's this guiding hand that was always there.
Yeah. I think in coming into the course, we came in as actors and left as artists. But in terms of the actual work itself, at the end, well, I was able to anyway, at the end of the 3 months, decipher and figure out in me when I'm performing a scene, when the actor is present and when the artist is present. And it was so, I'd say maybe about 2 months into it, I realised the difference, and it was like a bus hit me. It was such an obvious difference when you're up on stage and it is an artist through the character is coming out, and it is just, it's so free, you feel liberated. There is no little voice in your head going, I should be here, you should have said this way or whatever. But it's an amazing feeling to be in a scene and to be nowhere else at all in your head, bar that exact moment, and to have something guiding you in your head that is not your self-conscious, it's not you. It is, it sounds so ethereal, it's a higher power, you know. And it is, but to feel that, and I think it was about maybe 2.5 months in that I experienced the artist coming. It is such an amazing realization, and to know that maybe in the past maybe tiny bits of it had come out in my work, but to know exactly what it is now at the end of the 3 months and what it feels like and how to get it. And yes, I'm gushing. I find it hard to articulate because it's such a strange, it's such a wonderful feeling, but I think I find it very hard to articulate.
But the most enjoyable part of the course were those moments of revelation, to hit, you know, what you were, and you would say yourself, even some of it is, you know, it's hard to articulate at times, because they are, as an artist, there's sensations. You're kind of going, oh, I know what that was now. I can feel the presence of the artist guiding it, or the freedom of it. And to hit those moments was just amazing, because you know, throughout the course I would have had moments where it's like, oh, that's, you know, I don't get it, you know, I don't get it yet. I can't get I haven't felt that yet, and I can't grasp that concept quite right. But then, you know, we obviously spent a lot of time within a few days or within a few weeks, you'd have your moment in a scene that suddenly goes, that was it, that was, I now know, I have that sense. And once you sense it, it's locked in forever then. You know where it is, you know when that moment happened, and then you're fully aware of reaching it again, knowing that if I'm not reaching it, maybe I haven't done enough homework yet, I haven't solved all the problems, so one of them is still interrupting me, so I need to get the homework right. And that was a big part of it. It was like, if you do the homework and you do it right, and you've not left anything in doubt, you're not sitting there kind of going, well, I didn't quite work out that little piece, but I'll be fine. You have to solve it, but then once you do, you're free to just to run it, and you start hitting those points of knowing that you're just letting the character live. We reached that point because of the technique and the structured approach and all the homework that we did. And it was realization it didn't happen by accident, and if you're aiming for it again and you want it again, you can't cheat the homework. You just can't cheat that process, you know. And if you're going to be, you know, doing your best work as an artist, and you're going to actually go, I want to do this and do it right, and every piece of work you do, you really have to put in that homework, you know. And if you leave any piece unsolved, it will, as Joe said, it's going to sit there. It's going to intrude at some point where it's like, you're not really, you don't have that physicality right, you're missing a line, that line you're paraphrasing and you know it, and it can intrude slightly. So, but having that structured technique now, like I said, it doesn't happen by accident, you know. When we were hitting that point, we were, whatever, it might have been 9 or 10 weeks in, and we'd gone through so much work that, you know, the understanding, that's what hit me at that point, is like, you know, this, you know, we're not hitting these moments by accident. We've had a very structured approach with, you know, wonderful pacing through it to take us to this point, obviously, but to know to reach it again, that I can, there's a path to it, is great, and I can take any piece of work, and if I put in that homework, I'm confident I can hit that place again, and where the character, where the story needs to be. Like.
And even in terms of the core structure, it was just introduced at such the right time that when we did start all acting with Abandon, it was just the perfect time for it to be introduced. And I think and it seems like such a simple concept, but to introduce it in week 2, there was no point. But we now know that, like, what pacing we need to do to get there, and what we need to do, and the homework we need to do before we can ever get there. So, yeah.
I think that was, and there's a number of points on the techniques that come together and bring that all together, the trust element and the homework element of, as you said, you hit these points and we have plenty of them where it is scary and it is, where's the scene going? Am I doing justice to the writer? Am I, are we taking it, or are we telling the right story here? But to realise that if you have plugged in the homework, and you have plugged in the objectives, and you have plugged in all the other elements of the technique that allow you to embody that character, then yes, it is right, because you're just letting the real life and the real character sensations hit you. So it's going to be what is real for that scene in that moment and for that person living that piece of their life. So, I think that it's the trust to get through the scary moments and realize that this is right. This is where you should be with this person, because each of us sitting in life, we are torn a million different ways. There's a lot going on at all times. So why not for them? And therefore, every time you run these, there can be little pulls in different directions every single time, because there's dominant forces and dominant sensations coming in at different times, and it's wonderful to kind of go, well, that's okay, because this is just telling this moment of time for this person's life, and it doesn't need to be the same every time you run through it. It needs to be real. It needs to be this moment in time, and what hits you, you have to kind of run with it a little bit.
I think as well, even in terms of a rehearsal, and it is, as you said, letting go of the control of, I did this in rehearsal, it worked in rehearsal, we must do it again now, and trying to creating something, a moment that has happened in the past that can't be recreated. You have to be careful not to attempt to do that again, because in doing that you're cutting off any possibility you have in this new moment that you're doing in the scene. So it is all about letting go of control, or just realizing that you can't, in being in control, you are losing control completely. You're cutting off any possibility of the character feeling any sensations, because you go, no, at this point on this line in rehearsal I felt this, so I have to, and that was good, it was great. So yeah, it is all about losing control and being in control at the same time. Yeah, it just needs to be done, letting the homework go. Because I remember even week 2, I was doing again the Marco Rowe play, and I remember sitting opposite my partner, and something had come into my head in the middle of the scene. I was like, oh, Joe, you need to remember you're in your parents' house at the moment. And in saying that, obviously I was gone from the scene, and at the end of it I was like, God, I thought I tried to bring, and I almost felt guilty that I wasn't bringing the homework into the scene with me. But this obvious realisation that in trying to do that, in trying to go, oh, I'm in my parents' house, act like you're in the midst of the scene, completely ruins everything, and you must, it just has to be left at the door. Yeah.
I mean, to let go of the homework it's a difficult phrase to get your head around as well, because it's just, you've spent so much time with this character, and you've walked with them, and you've spent time, you've chatted to them, you've built it all up, and you've taken their life and you've plugged it in so much that it's just there. If you've done the homework right, it's there. You can feel it running through your body at that point of view, their life and their memories and their history, and everything about them. So it's the homework, you're carrying it at all times. It's with you. You have it, but it's to let go of any conscious thought of it, and not to be running anything through your head, because at that stage it just sits in you. You find this character, you anchor yourself into it, and then you just trust that it's flowing through your body at that point. You're just embodying them, and it's all there. So you don't need to reach for it. It just comes because you've done the homework. It comes at the right moments, and the imagery comes at the right moments, and the sensations hit, and their history and their life just guide you through it, because you've done so much work on it that it can just sit right in the center, and if you're them, you're doing them justice straight away.
I mean, as actors, I think a lot of actors do need validation, or they crave validation. I mean, I think that's fair enough too. I mean, we need reassurance, don't we? We crave reassurance, we crave praise, But I think again with this course, to get to a point where you don't need it anymore. You just don't need that praise. You don't need the validation of anybody else. And that's not ego either, because if you don't respect, say, the casting director that you're going to see, or you don't respect the director down at the gate or the abbey that you're going to audition for. You do, of course, but you don't need their validation. And that's very liberating for them, because they don't want people coming in to audition, 20, 30, 40 people, one after the other, all these actors in a queue coming in to get their validation and to get patted on the back. You don't need that. You come in and you offer this moment, this piece of work to them, and that's a lovely way to work. It's such a liberating way to work, and a freeing feeling working that way. And that to me is, in terms of the course, it's an acting course, of course. That's what it is, and you learn a very specific technique, but you're also learning to be an artist, which will make the acting much better. Because then you don't have that self-consciousness, that need for validation. All of the focus goes into creating the work of art instead of creating something that you hope will get a good review or something. It doesn't matter anymore.
But to know that you are 100% satisfied with the work you've created and that piece of art, because it is a piece of art. No one else has. It's your vision, and it's come from the page to this character that you are playing, and to really know that. And recognise the artistry in doing that, I think, is so important, and I certainly have that now at the end of the 3 months.
Great.
And I didn't beforehand.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's a very specific way that it's structured as well. And I'm really glad that comes across.
Yep.
That, like you were saying, there's a very specific line of how things need to be introduced, and then it's the right time to drop an idea in, and then drop another idea in, and then you kind of get to that point where you think, well, there can't be any more. And then there's this, then there's abandon, there's third place, or something like that happens, and then and that enriches the work again, So I'm really glad that came across, and that's good.